Hey everybody, welcome to the stream, to the recap of game 13. The game ended about 7 or 8 minutes ago. I watched the last like hour and a half of the game, I think, and so forth. Everybody's having a good morning. All right, let's get to the recap. Jan is white, Ding is black. This is game 13. The score is 6-6 before this game. They played another Rui Lopez. Not very surprising. And they've had this position. This is the third time they've had this position after D3. And we've talked about it in previous games. Okay, now in this position, Jan has played C3 and A3. And now he went back to C3, which he played first. Castles. Okay, now Jan took a different approach than he did in the previous games. Played H3, which is fine. And then after bishop B7, he played bishop E3, which, to be honest, I don't like the bishop on E3. I think it makes more sense for white to maneuver his knight, to G3 or E3, instead of playing this move. Problem with this move is it gets in the way. So, like, if white plays D4 later, then the E4 pawn's harder to defend with the rook. It loses a tempo because white isn't getting his knight over here quickly. And sometimes the bishop can get attacked. Actually, all that stuff happened this game, but that's a coincidence. So, anyway, we have another new position pretty early in the match. Hey, Raj. And not super impressed with Jan's opening choice. Okay, so knight A5, the bishop goes back to C2, and then C5. Knight BD2. Usually we see the bishop here in these kinds of positions. Rook E8. Black wants to play bishop F8. And eventually D5, hopefully. He has to defend his pawn first. And here, white played A4. Typical kind of move. Black could play B4, but he played H6. Just really solid. And it doesn't seem like white has anything here. This just seems quite staid. And this one of the few times Jan doesn't get anything with white out of the opening. Okay, he played D4. I guess he didn't really see a good way to build up the position anymore. And D4 is a little risky because you're weakening your E pawn a lot. And you've already played D3, so you're like half a tempo down from a normal Rui Lopez. With the bishop on E3 also. So I don't know. I'm not a fan of this bishop E3 move or D4. Okay, so Ding played well. He traded everything. And then played knight C4. This position, you could argue this is backward and weak. You could also argue this is weak. Now, this would be less palatable for black if the bishop was on C1. Then black isn't threatening anything of note. And white would have a wider variety of choice of what to do. But here, black can either take this or take this. Taking on E3 seems more important. So the engine was suggesting bishop F4 as a possible move. I guess if knight takes B2, queen B1, we're going to get our pawn back. But, I mean, white doesn't have any advantage playing bishop E3, bishop F4, D3, and D4. And black's position looks very reasonable. So, I mean, this basically Ding had just no trouble at all with black in this opening. And it's weird because if you see the clock times, it looks like this is prep for Jan, and it's just nothing. Thanks, Harry Chess. You're the best. So, okay, he played knight takes c4, which is reasonable. Okay, now things went off the rails. In this position, as I said earlier, the bishop can sometimes get attacked. So one thing that black can do is play bishop f8, which is always the idea when you play rook e8, putting pressure here. And the only reasonable way to defend that pawn is to play f3. Then your bishop's not defended. So what the engine wants to do to maintain equality for white is to play queen e2, attacking this pawn. So if we take here, I could take here. And if black defends the pawn, hoping to win this, then I can play f3. And after bishop f8, it's white's move. So white can play any move he wants to. Knight f5 is a good move. Bishop f8, knight f5. It's like I'm giving a lecture. And now after d5, the bishop is actually defended twice. And the d file's open, so we have rook d1. And this position's about equal. Black doesn't have any complaints, but white is okay. And instead, Jan made a mistake. Jan played f3, never play f3. And the difference between f3 here and the line I just looked at was this bishop isn't defended. The queen on e2 not only attacks the pawn on c4, but defends the bishop on e3. So now we play bishop f8, and we're just going to play d5 next move. And we're not in time to force black to play rook e8. Black doesn't rook c8, I should say. So if white tries to transpose and play queen e2, for example, now if black plays rook c8, that's the line we just looked at. But black doesn't have to play rook c8. Black can play d5. And white's position isn't very good. This pawn's defended now. This pawn's attacked a lot. And white's position doesn't make a lot of sense. Since I'm going to take this pawn for sure. So this little nuance of playing queen e2 first is actually important. Okay, so Jan played bishop f2, getting out of the way of this annoyance. d5, attacking the e-pawn many times, so he has to take. And in this position, black has several ways to get an advantage. Obviously, this isn't what white was hoping for. White doesn't have any pawns in the center, and his king side looks a bit silly. Generally, when you play f3 with a pawn on e4, you're making a nice pawn structure. You're not trading your e-pawn and having this silly pawn structure here, which is sometimes happens to white in the Sicilian, and black gets an early d5 in. Okay, so you could play queen a5 or knight d5 or bishop d5 or queen d5. You can do anything. He played knight d5, which is the human move. Bishop e4. And over the next few moves, Ding starts to misplay the position, misevaluate it, something. Did something wrong. So here you can see the knight is pinned on d5 to the bishop on b7. So the engine wants to play the move rook b8, defending the bishop. So the knight's not pinned anymore. Then the knight could go to f4 or b4. Another move is queen g5. Then the rook can go to d8, which is a nice square for the rook. And Ding chose a really clunky move. And to be honest, I don't think I would ever play this move because I would be afraid to. The next move looks strange. But I'm not Ding, so he played rook e5. I mean, the rook looks really strange on e5. It does defend the knight again, but I mean, the rook can obviously get harassed on e5. It's just a very strange move to play rook e5. Okay, white played rook c1, which attacks the pawn on c4. And black played rook c8. These moves are good. And white played knight to e2, opening up the line for his bishop and his queen. And in this position, Ding made another slight error. Sort of trapped his own rook. One of the problems black has is he can't move his knight because bishop takes bishop. And even if bishop takes bishop wasn't available, the rook is defending this and this. So black's position is a little strange. But black still has an advantage, and he can play the move queen e8, which is similar to what he played. That puts pressure on the a4 pawn in case white's queen moves away from d1. And it gives the black rook some more flexibility if it gets attacked. You know, it can go to e7 or e6. But he played queen e7, which to a human makes more sense because you're defending your bishop on b7. So queen e7 gives away black's advantage because Jan played the very accurate queen d4. And now this rook is looking a little strange, like it might get attacked and trapped and pinned and such. For example, you know, if white plays bishop g3 and black plays rook g5, we have bishop h4. Whereas if the queen was on e8, then you wouldn't have this problem. And in this position, strangely enough, the engine likes the move queen e8, which sacrifices this pawn, and then queen e8, and it says if rook takes c4, then we can play rook d8. We can also take, and it says they're both equal, this pawn sacrifice. After rook c4, we have this beautiful move knight e3, takes, bishop takes, and the idea is if you take, I have rook takes e4. And then bishop d4, rook takes e2. This is actually all forced. Rook takes f7. If queen f7, queen takes. And if rook e1 check, rook f1. So rook takes, king takes, queen takes, and draw agreed. So that's one way to equalize, is to go into this long forcing variation with queen e8. But instead, he played the move f5, which is also fine. And this is an exchange sacrifice, so you can't really blame black because always sacrifice the exchange. And white said, okay, I'll win the exchange, bishop to g3. And in this position, Fabi and Hess and Tanya were looking mainly at f takes, which is the engine move. And then you can take either way on e5. For example, if you take with the bishop, and I take on f3, and you take with the rook, black has great compensation for the exchange with this nice white squared bishop. Black has a nice knight on d5, and after the move queen e6, black's threatening bishop c5, which wins. And the engine wants to play rook takes f8 to stop that, and then we have equal material and probably a drawn position according to the computer. You could also take with the queen on e5. It's sort of similar to the game. Takes, takes, e takes f3. And if rook takes f3, then you can play rook e8. And see, this is very hard for black to play compared to what happened in the game, because in this position, I'm down the exchange for no pawns. And the reason I'm equal is because I have tricks, like rook e8 with a skewer. And the way that Ding played, he had a pawn for the exchange, so that made more sense to him. So as a human, it makes more sense what Ding did, but the engine wants to take with the pawn. But he played rook takes. And they went into this endgame where black has a passed pawn. Black has the two bishops. Black has a knight coming to d3. And white has an exchange. So this is the kind of position where engines like white and humans think black has enough compensation for the exchange because of the pawn, the nice knight, the passed pawn, the two bishops. And the engine says, I don't care about that. I'm up in exchange for a pawn, so I'm better. So the engine prefers white, and as the game went on, it preferred white more. And humans were like, whatever. It's fine for black. And Ding wasn't too worried, I guess, because his knight has this nice d3 square. He has a passed pawn. He's got the white squares. So very good compensation for an exchange. Okay, he played rook d1, knight b4. The knight wants to come to d3. Rook attacks the bishop. Bishop c5 check. If we play king f1 to get closer to the center, then actually black is better because we have rook f8 check, and we have knight d3 check, and so forth. The king is actually getting in trouble here. Now the engine prefers black. So he played king h2, which is much safer. Bishop c6, attacking the rook. If you play rook d7 and the guy plays bishop c6 and you move your rook back, then why did you play rook d7? So the reason he played rook d7 was to play rook c7. Since white's rooks aren't very good because this knight's coming in, trading rooks was actually a good idea. Now the engine really started to like white, but again, humans don't really mind having black here. Black has lots of advantages for his exchange. He has a pawn, his knight's coming here, he's got two bishops, he has a passed pawn. I mean, black has a lot for the exchange. So it shouldn't be losing, although the engine liked white quite a bit. Okay, he played knight c3, and then knight d3, attacking the rook on e1, rook c2, defending the pawn and saving the rook, and then bishop back to c6. Now in this position, white's knight is tied down to the pawn on a4, so if the knight ever tries to move somewhere, this pawn is weak. So he played the move a5. That pawn's defended pretty well. And if we ever take this a6 pawn in some kind of dream world, then we have good chances to make a queen. Black played king f7. And now, in this position, surprisingly, and when I say surprisingly, very surprising for the engines. For humans, but for engines, whoa. So like if you're watching this and you're an engine, I know you're surprised now. So sorry, we're humans. That's what we do. We're humans. So in this position, the engine says white's better, and white should play knight e2, attacking this pawn. Black should play bishop d5, and white should trade off the knights because that knight is fantastic. And we can't lose our bishop for nothing. And if we play bishop e6, then our c pawn is hanging and the e pawn's hanging. So you have to take. And this seems like it's helped white quite a bit because the knight's not on d3 anymore. But the engine says the humans think it's fine for black just to do nothing. Now there is a forcing line that's sort of complicated. Obviously, black could just play like king e6 or something and just chill and say like, why am I losing? Although b3 looks pretty annoying. So the problem with b3 is I can always take it and push my pawn, which Fabian Hess pointed out. But there's this move e3, which I would doubt would be played. I can't imagine that would be played. And the idea is after rook here, you play c3. That's why I don't think this will be played. And then bishop c4. And this, if you sack the exchange now to get this pawn up endgame, this is a complete draw. This is just dead drawn. So if white wants to win, white would play either rook b2 or rook e1. The engine prefers rook b2. Then g5, bishop g3. And to me, this looks like white's winning because white's up in exchange for no pawns. The problem is it's hard to get this king into the game. So I can't imagine this happening because this looks, to me, without analyzing, it looks like white should win eventually. So I don't think he would have done this. I think after knight e2, bishop d5 takes, he just would have played some boring move like king e6. And, eventually black has a plan. Black can try to move his king over here and try to get his king up. Or black could just chill and say, like, your king's not participating in the game. You can't get your king in there. I have a passed pawn. My pawns are defended. Your rook's no good. Your rook's not over here attacking bishops and pawns and kings. It's here doing nothing. So this is good winning chances for white and good drawing chances for black. It's, you know, it's a 2-result game. And that's what white should do. White should play knight e2 and knight f4 and so forth. And instead, Jan played rook e2, attacking this pawn. And a repetition ensued, knight c1 attacking the rook, and so forth. And of course, if white wanted to play for a win, he could go back to c2 and then play knight e2 and get that position we were talking about, which is what should have happened. And what's funny about this is, if black doesn't want to repeat, black has this weird move, king e6, which looks insane. And the idea is, taking this is actually a mistake. Hard to believe. Because now I'm going to win this pawn, and this pawn is going to be good. So now, actually, white is struggling for a draw here. Like if white plays here, black plays here, and I'm taking black here. I take this pawn, I push, and this king's over here. Now the engine says it's a draw, which I'm sure it is. The engine says it is, but I'm taking black. White has to fight hard to draw because this pawn is going to be really strong. So actually, after king e6, white probably shouldn't take this and should play something like bishop b6. And this position's also a draw. Black can check, and then black can do that repetition again if he wants. And that's even just bishop e5, the engine says is equal, because if you do this, I have this king d5 again, and your pawn's hanging. And okay, I mean black's pretty active, so the game ended in this repetition, and this is move 40. So I guess technically black hasn't made move 40, but this is a 3-time repetition. So Jan was a little lucky that Ding messed it up in the middle game, and Ding was a little lucky that Jan wasn't more ambitious, I guess, and trying to play harder for a win. Seemed like both players were sort of happy with a draw because of the ups and downs of this game. But I'm guessing if I do a review, it's not going to be good. It's pretty good. White played 96.3 and black played 96.6. But there were some mistakes. Yay, 999. Thanks, Apprentice. You're the best. So a hard-fought draw. Black had the advantage. White had the advantage. And the game ended in a repetition. Lots of my rules this game: never play f3, always play bishop f8, always sacrifice the exchange. So many rules were followed and broken that the game ended in a draw. Tomorrow's a rest day. And then in a couple days, so today's Thursday, so Saturday they play the final game. And then if it's a draw next game, they're going to play some kind of playoff, but I don't know the playoff rules at all. So whoever wins the next game is the world champion, and if it's a draw, they'll have a playoff, and so forth. Is this match a disgrace, as some claim? No, it's a good match. This match is great. Great match. Go, Nepo, and Ding. Yeah, games are really interesting. Different openings, some mistakes, some brilliant moves. Pretty good match. I wasn't able to see the press conference, but some of those are good. Yeah. All right, so I'll see you tonight. Go Hawks, go, etc., mainly etc. And I hope you enjoyed this recap and so forth. Let's see, who should we raid? Let's see, Karen got anybody to raid? I guess I'll just raid chess.com. All right, see you guys tonight. Thanks for watching the recap.